All right, well, welcome. I'm really excited today to be spending the next hour or so with Dr. Patrick Wozniak. I probably am butchering your last name, so you can correct me on that here in a second. I'm sure it won't be the first time. But thanks for agreeing to do this. And for everyone's context, like Dr. Patrick and I have probably been working together around a year now. You were one of the earliest people to help me out with framework really as a medical advisor as we dug into a lot of the science. And there's a lot of great science out there around sauna and cold plunge and some maybe not so well supported claims and we'll get into some of that here in a little bit. But before we do that, Patrick, we'd love you just to introduce yourself a little bit. What's your background, what's your current job, and kind of what made you interested in spending a little bit of time with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. It's been a pleasure working with you and Framework over the last, I guess it's been just over a year now. I think we've been talking. So me personally, I'm an ER physician, and I'm a military, so I'm Army, and I've been working with special operations. And currently, I'm the Special Operations Central Command Surgeon. So regionally focused, we are the Middle East representatives for special operations.
Yeah.
And prior to that, and how I got to met Allen was that I was in the Nashville area with Fifth Special Forces Group right there by Nashville, and so I was a doc for them, and then kind of how I got interested in the hot cold stuff was while I was with Fifth Group, I was a big part of the Human Performance and Wellness program that they have there. And the easiest context to think about it in is SOF kind of places a lot of energy and effort into human capital.
Yeah.
And how we can sort of maintain, sustain, and grow the performance of our humans. And these modalities, the heat and the cold, are a part of that algorithm. And so we're always looking for those kind of things that are working, that are science based, and that can give us an edge. Because as you know, in business too, that 1% difference is cumulative and adds up, and then gives us an advantage where we need to be. So
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, I think that it makes sense that the military would be interested in these types of things that have recovery vectors that add performance. I think even some of the studies we looked at were originated with some of the extreme temperatures, because obviously there's, theaters of combat that are extreme temperatures. So probably some, overt like on the field kind of needs that may have originated some of this. And then obviously, as you say, like a lot of interest in developing and making, bodies and minds sustainable for all of the needs of military purposes.
yeah, and sauna and cold are a great modality because how we do the human performance thing is really kind of five pillars. So physical is one of them, and certainly it
Yeah.
fits into the physical category, but it really bleeds over into the psychological categories, the cognitive category, even I would argue maybe the spiritual category for some people as they have time to kind of reflect in the sauna. There's not a lot to do in there, so for your 20-minute session or whatever, it can be a
Yeah.
spiritual event for some people.
And talk to me a little bit about you personally, and if this is contemporaneous with the military or not. But how did you personally come to start kind of pulling on the thread of hot and cold as health practices or recovery practices or anything like that? And then how does that interweave with your work? Previously when you were here in Tennessee or wherever that sort of originated with the military vector.
Yeah, so they both kind of developed simultaneously, so it was kind of a perfect mix of space and time.
Yeah.
But just like most of like a lot of folks, right? Like I'm not getting younger, I'm getting older, and so I'm constantly on the search for good science and an edge to. Because in my mind, I'm still 20 years old, but in my body, I'm sometimes reflecting my current age. And so I'm looking for opportunities to recover better, to be kind of my best physical self that I can be. And of course, I still have goals, and a lot of those are performance based. And so any advantage I can get or any recovery technique that I can do that's advantageous and healthy and science driven,
Yeah.
I'm going to take advantage of that as well. So that kind of emerged sort of as I was in that role at fifth group. And we had access to some of the modalities like the cold tubs so it made it super easy and really removed all the barriers for me to just go all in and try it. So in my realm, right, like one of the things that hampering me, I'll just use myself as an example because it's free, but flexibility as we get older, we can just look at that, right? And so part of my regimen was to get in the sauna kind of post workouts and really work on my flexibility when those muscles are kind of already warmed up. Just elongate them, do some rolling, and I found that really helped me get ready not for that workout but for the next day's workout. That was fantastic for me as far as addressing some of the issues that I was having.
Did you find that it was, or has your principle been sort of for most things that you recommended to men and women that you worked with, that you wanted to kind of test it out yourself first, or make it a part of your practices? Like how does that sort of like things I do personally and things I recommend to others in the role that you were in, like how much did those overlap?
Yeah, I think for the most part, I try to be the person who's done what I say I do or what I say other people should do. In some instances, it's not possible for me to do the things that I'm saying. And but I'll give you an example of an extreme that I do, right? So I still take care of kids in the ER, but when I take care of kids, right, I try the kids' medications. I know that's going to sound funny, but
Yeah.
because then I figure out the hacks, right? So we the medicines taste the
It's
same.
like bubblegum flavored,
Yeah, is it cherry
oral
flavored? Is
orals
it
or
bad cherry flavored? But
yeah.
we figured out and we just took it as a personal, like local thing. Hey, we got an icy machine, and if we mixed it with a certain flavor of icy, you can't taste it at all. And so we kind of kind of hacked into the system and put ourselves in the kids' shoes at times because there are
That's
some
awesome.
pretty bad ones out there.
Yeah. I'll have to remember that with my kids as well.
Yeah, I've
Um,
got all the tricks.
totally. Um, let's go inside to the extent that you can share. I'd love to go inside of the training regimen a little bit of the men and women in the army that you have worked with, and maybe pick kind of the phase of your career or the base or the group or whatever. But when you found the hot and cold practices to be something that you were sort of recommending to folks, what did that broad training regimen look like? And then what role did you tend to find hot and cold to be most useful? Who did it get recommended for? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so the group of folks that probably most benefited and most used it. So in my time, I was initially conventional army, and the scale is just so big that a lot of the things are kind of late to make it to conventional army. So if you want to imagine back even just 10 years, conventional army, we were just getting into providing them with the equipment to do kind of functional fitness and that kind of thing. So that was kind of the realm that I was in with them. So as I progressed into the special operations community, they were already well ahead of that. And so they were already into purposefully built performance facilities staffed by professional strength and conditioning coaches, nutritionists, sports psychologists. So we were quite a bit advanced. That was a pretty big leap. And then to your point, right? Like the prescribed training regimens were quite a bit different because you have purpose-built teams within there that do certain functions. And I'll just use like a dive team is a good example, right? Like there's teams that are qualified divers, combat divers, and they have like a very specific task list and physical characteristics that they have to maintain.
Yeah.
So the team training is based around that. but the individual training is based around kind of just the physical rigors of performing that job. Now you layer on top of that Army school stuff, and a guy knows, hey, in 12 months I am going to X school. Well, there's a specific train up for that as well. So the programs are individualized by the person, but the team-based training is kind of surrounding the concept that the team has. So where the hot and cold really fits in is it's not really a good team sport for hot and cold. I mean, the tubs are nice, but they're not like it's not a team event, right? But we've got to get the individual training individual ready for the team events and ready for the next day's training, because as you know, in training, consistency is really the key. And so that's kind of the goal. And then the hot and cold facilities are available. And the advice usually comes from the strength and conditioning coaches, because as you know from some of the studies we looked at, the timing of the application of some of those things is pretty key as far as what result we're hoping to get out of it. And so, muscle hypertrophy is a good example, right? We looked at the studies, and there was some question. They're not the greatest study, right? But there's some question of, does it blunt muscle hypertrophy if you use the cold too close to like a heavy training session?
Yeah.
If you ask the strength and conditioning coaches, it certainly does, right? They're unequivocally like, don't do it. But we get great benefit from the delayed onset muscle soreness prevention if we apply it 12 to 18 hours after the training session. So that's kind of the way that it fits in. But then you have kind of this individualization by these are free humans that kind of read what they want and do what they want as well. So you have all kinds of people trying anecdotal things and providing N of one studies back to you on feedback. And so, my general theory is, hey, if it works for you, that's fantastic. Like, we gotta encourage you to use the stuff and to be the best you can be, regardless of how I feel. If you feel it's an advantage, then it's an advantage. So,
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about how how much you needed to sell the idea of using hot and cold. I remember us talking about this, and for some folks, they gravitated naturally to it, or they were reading some of the same articles and listening to some of the same podcasts maybe that you and I are. And so you've got really eager folks, and then some folks that probably were less so. Like, to what degree in the populations that you worked with was this something that was like a no-brainer to people versus something that you had to kind of push and sell through? And how did you do that when that was the case?
so I think the guys, the end users, generally are inquisitive and like super willing to try new stuff, and so never had an issue selling it to them. The issue that I had was providing the resource for them to make it easy and kind of remove the barriers to them, because you can imagine a cold tub, or a couple cold tubs, or 4 cold tubs, I think is what we had.
Yeah.
They have to be maintained by the staff. They have to be safe for repetitive use. So we actually had to go through and eliminate the barriers to reasons why they couldn't be up and running and ready. And that was kind of my task as like an administrator, was essentially, right, like framework does that for you if you're trying to use the facilities, right? And so that's the fantastic thing about like your model, right? In my case, right, I had to like provide some.
Yeah, I mean, right, that's like one of the biggest barriers here is access, and
That's right.
it
Yeah.
shows up in the day-to-day, kind of retail world that I live in. But it sounds like, that is a problem or a barrier within the military as well. Like there are not some of these facilities, or they're limited relative to the, population size or something like that.
Yeah, and honestly, like we mentioned before, like you could get something as simple as like a physical therapist who doesn't believe in something, and then suddenly the door is always locked, to that room that has the tub in it, right, or the sauna in it. And it's like, okay, well, that's a simple solution on my end, but that's how simple it can be. And so, yeah, you're right. Like having a facility that has it and having access to it is kind of the key. And that's, I think most people don't have a sauna in their house here in America.
And what does that equipment distribution look like if you sort of like reflect on the bases that you've been to? Is that something where this is now showing up everywhere in the same way that like of course there's a gym, right? Everywhere and you know access to strength equipment or cardio equipment or whatever. What does sort of the like take us inside the facilities that
Yeah,
you've observed?
yeah. I was actually it was eye opening moving here because here is a collection point for people from like multiple different organizations. And so just kind of seeing what they're accustomed to and what they have at their previous home stations was pretty key. Here, they're building, they're currently under construction. So a beautiful indoor physical training facility. And then next door to that, a beautiful indoor rehab facility that houses the physical therapists, athletic trainers, and then the cold and hot is right in there with it. Currently, there's no sauna here in our footprint for the unit. There's one on the base though, so you still have access. You gotta
Yeah.
drive like a mile, right? Which is not too bad. Still pretty, and that's 24/7 access. So that thing's open all the time. But and the cold tubs are here at the base or at our unit are still the same. Now that's all going to be in the one building right in our footprint. Um, and so to answer, I think your first question, I think like we're past the point where we're trying to convince people that these are good modalities. Now we're solving the resourcing problem of making them available to the masses. And so what that looks like in a footprint here is, a 6 to 8 person sauna that's pretty much operational 24/7. And then the cold tubs would be right now, they're three cold tubs, which service we're about 300 people. And so that's pretty good because you get anywhere on the regimens for people are, anywhere from, 6 to 12 minutes for the cold tub,
Mhm.
depending on what their goals are and what their regimen is and what their tolerance is. Um, and then the sauna, you can just kind of pack them in there. I mean, it says 8, but
Yeah.
whatever fits, fits.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What would you estimate the prevalence of usage is? Like if you talk about that population of 300, do you have 10% of people that you think, you know, in a given week would utilize some of this, or is it 50? Like what does sort of prevalence look like in the population that you're working with?
Well, I don't have exact numbers, but I will tell you that one of the things that surprised me here was just the number of people that use the cold tub. I hadn't experienced that, and I don't know if that's like a Florida thing, right?
Yeah, right.
Because it does feel pretty good most of the year,
Yeah.
but I had not experienced that as much previously. And here it seems like everybody does some sort of cold submersion at some point during the week and in different variable, hey, I do it twice a week after on Tuesdays and Fridays or whatever. If everybody's got a recipe and everybody's doing it, and literally when I go in there after PT in the morning or physical training in the morning, there is an understood rotation of people that are doing the cold tub. So they've got they all know who goes ahead of them, and they come in a certain order into the locker room, and
Yeah.
they just have it down to us to kind of their local regimen. So it's been impressive, and then just hearing people talk and they're like, oh yeah, I go down after lunch on Wednesdays and I do a plunge for 8 minutes or something, shower and go back to work, and you never know, like during their lunch break, that's just what they do.
I mean, it's so ideal, right? Like we should all be so lucky to have it like down the hall from
Yeah, it's in my
like,
building literally where I work. I mean, literally
yeah,
you go downstairs.
that's awesome and really, you know, as someone who obviously like believes a lot in these
Mm,
practices, that's you know, and a lot of it's really interesting to see when you remove that barrier to access, what then usage looks like, right? Because that's like
yeah,
an interesting test case that doesn't exist in a lot of places. And you know, I think as we see more of this, I was just reading about this being a big trend in luxury, like high-end apartment buildings, right? They're starting to add this as an amenity. You know, it's no longer just like, okay, we have a pool and we have a gym. It's we have a cold tub.
yeah.
And, you know, like what does the prevalence of usage look like when access is so much greater. And of course, this is something Framework's trying to, contribute in our own way too, as well. So that's really cool to be able to see. Let's jump off that for a second, which is to say, we'll come back to like what all the science says, right? That you and I went through.
Yeah.
But what do the people say, right? When with that level of prevalence of usage,
Yeah.
when someone talks about like why they do it, how do people talk about the benefits that they feel?
So I think if I had to like quantify like by the most common thing I hear is just recovery, right? And I think when I dig into that more, I think what I understand that to mean is the reduction in the delayed onset muscle soreness and the ability to sort of repeat physical effort at a at a 24-hour interval. Because for most of the guys here, a PT would be 4 days a week: Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then whatever they decide to do in their own time on Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday.
And is
Um,
that like, would you rate that as like a fairly intensive workout, those recurring PT sessions?
Yeah, if they're actually participating and doing the prescribed stuff, now it's rotational, right? So like it's 2 lower body days, 2 upper body days for the most part,
Mhm.
with cardio built on the back end of the workouts. So I would say, but for the most part, like those are pretty intense workouts, like a lot of weight moved, and by weight I just mean repetitions, times the load. So a lot of physical effort, and then heart rate is got to be moderate to it's not this is not a zone 2 workout that they're doing.
Yeah.
It'll be kind of pretty intense for most people. So yeah, and then Wednesdays are yoga, to be honest, and that's
Love
like
it.
a paid for thing here where we have yoga Wednesdays and Fridays, for recovery and flexibility, and that's kind of their down day. So a little bit of options on Friday, Wednesday, quite a bit of participation
Yeah, I
in.
mean, I don't know that the stereotype is like the U.S. Army yoga class, right? But
No,
it's cool to
you
see a
gotta
lot of
keep
these
them healthy.
practices that clearly,
Yeah,
out in the world, everybody believes are a good part of being, healthy and sustainably building and sustaining your body and seeing that kind of flow all the way through.
yeah. Now I think we've seen that, like with the, whatever we want to call them, warrior athletes, or just middle-aged guys like me, right? Like injury prevention, variations in the actual training regimen, and then utilizing science to incorporate kind of things that you wouldn't think. Like yoga is a good example, and it's actually the perfect example. And to be honest, and well, I'll wait till we jump into the evidence, because I'll tell you like my most um, like useful sauna hack, right, when it
Yeah.
comes to physical training.
Nice. Well,
Um,
I think we should take the opportunity to say, like, suggest that I don't want people to get the wrong impression when you say middle-aged guys like you. What did you tell me you did a 5K, a 10K, a half, and a marathon on back to back to back days or something?
yeah, well, that was yeah, it was just under 50 miles. It was fun. It was for charity, so it made it palatable. But honestly, the cold tank was a good part of that training regimen.
I would think so.
Yeah, and so it really helped me kind of get through the soreness of it, and just kind of work everything out. So it was perfect.
Is there anything else? So you talked about muscle soreness recovery being kind of the top talking point that you hear
Yeah,
from the folks who are using the cold tubs. Is anything else surfaced with frequency that people point to?
yeah. The second thing that I hear all the time is just that I don't know how they really describe it. They kind of call it like they're cognitively switched on, right? And so I was kind of studying these individuals, and they're doing full submersion, right? So they're doing the full head and face submersion, and they swear by it. Like they the ones that I'm thinking of, which is probably about an N of 10.
Yeah.
They do the full body submersion. The tubs are kind of small, so when I say full body, it might be like kind of hips down. They kind of put their feet over the edge and do like a sit up when they want to come out.
Mhm.
They're going fully in, and underwater for whatever that is, 30 seconds, or
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so they swear by it though, and they'll do that a few times, and then they'll hop out and hit the showers or whatever. But it's kind of impressive, And but they say, hey, that's my morning, like, or that like that gets me going, and I'm turned on for like the rest of the day, and they can't really explain it any differently. But
So
I haven't been brave enough to try that one yet.
let's get your kind of scientific and medical overlay to that point, right? I think this is something that I've observed, and I talked to a lot of people at Framework that they really like coming in the morning before work,
Yeah,
uh, and getting a cold tub in. Like I've had a guy who was a salesperson who would be like, the days that you're not open, I don't sell anything, and he used kind of different language than that, but
yeah,
talking about how much better as a salesperson that he was using cold. Another guy saying that he just felt like he was a more attentive partner and
yeah.
had as a result of kind of using the hot and cold. I think the cold's a big part of that. I always end on cold because I feel a lot more kind of energized and focused. Let's overlay some of the science here for a second. Like what's going on that kind of causes that more like subjective description?
Yeah, and well, for starters, I don't think it's probably not much different than people that find other activities in the morning to be particularly activating, or and so like the runner who loves to run in the morning but feels um, kind of not as great of a runner in the afternoon, or not as much energy, right? So we haven't done anything. We've just been sleeping. So we are, like our bodies are ready to be turned on,
Yeah.
and I think they're kind of primed for that. And so it's a great opportunity to really kind of kick everything off in a good way,
Yeah.
especially for people that are really receptive to. So the body's receptive. I think that's kind of the step one, right? And then when we have that stimulus, I think we've talked about this before, where we talk about how do we measure kind of resiliency.
Mhm.
So I think it does kind of long term makes an individual more resilient to have those exposures. But in that moment, right, like we're getting a release of our body sensing that stimulus, and you're getting a release of kind of neurotransmitters, and so all those things are exciting for people. It's kind of like it would also be akin to like maybe smoking your first cigarette in the morning.
Yeah.
Your body's receptive. You haven't had anything for a while, and it hits different.
Yeah.
So it is your drug in the morning if you are if you are an active and a cold tub user, just like running is somebody else's drug. So it really kind of is rewarding both cognitively, and then that carries though. That's the beautiful thing about it is you don't need to smoke again at noon. This kind of carries you through that day, just like that run does. And so I think that's kind of that's kind of the layman science behind it. But it's just a fascinatingly stimulating event that is primed to happen, and then leaves people with great positive results for the rest of the day.
Yeah. I mean, what a tool, right? Like to be able to do something that is measured in a small number of minutes that can work on your, physical body and recovery and kind of sharpen your mind and make you feel good and ready to enter the day. I think that's, it's one of those where yes, cold plunging like sort of is having this moment related to social media, and it, everybody's kind of wanting to get that and importantly post and tell people about it. But wow, like name something else to me that is carries those attributes of being fast, sustained, healthy, and working on both the mental and physical fronts. Yeah, that's like a pretty powerful thing to be able to do with, like at the end of the day, like pretty lightweight equipment, right? Like if you live
Yeah,
in an area around cold water, you can go jump in the lake. You can throw ice in your
I
bathtub. You can turn the shower this way. I
well,
think
I want
the
to say
time.
anecdotally, I tried this, not in the shower, but I think I told you this when we went to Ireland for a trip with me and my wife.
Yeah,
We had to run down to the. They all do it there. They all do cold water swimming and cold
yeah,
water. I forgot what they call it. They got a special name for it, but they're like, you have to do this while you're here. So we ran to the beach, which was about I want to say it was about 3/4 of a mile. It wasn't too
yeah,
far, and then we went in and did like a cold water plunge, and then ran back to the hotel or whatever. And what a fun experience! And I mean, like we weren't the only ones out there, so there was like a bunch of local folks out there doing it, and we didn't feel strange at all. And the water was cold.
Yeah, and I mean, like, those people's ancestors have probably been doing the same exact thing for thousands of years, right? Like,
Yeah,
what I like about this is, we've, the tubs that Framework or the tubs that the military has is, fancy equipment to make sure that you can, do that indoors or something. But like, people have been seeking this out for thousands of years without totally understanding the science a little bit.
and to be, we kind of stumbled into this a little bit in the military. And I don't know if I'm gonna, but like we were kind of actually thinking that the tub would be probably used more for heat, like a whirlpool, than cold initially when we bought them. So the tubs that we purchased initially were able to, you could change the temp and do either one, right?
Yeah, I think we actually have the same brand from some of my conversations with people
Yeah. So we were very convinced though that guys would want to get in the whirlpool, and honestly, the physical therapists probably used the whirlpool portion more in what they thought they'd be treating, kind of. And so then we kind of stumbled into this, like, oh, actually, like cold is pretty good, and like people like it, and now the science was building because it was pretty young back then.
right.
And so we kind of stumbled into it. So I don't want to like make it sound like we're light years ahead of anybody, but we're on our own exploration journey as well.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit. We went pretty deep into the cold water side, no pun intended. Let's talk a little bit about sauna in
Yeah.
your world. Recognizing that maybe the facility isn't quite as easy to access, but what do you find? What are situations where you encourage men and women to use the sauna? What do you find usage to be? And kind of the same question, like what do people report for the ones who use it or try it?
So I'll tell you. So I'll save my hack for next because I
Yeah.
think that's kind of. But but initially, right, like a lot of folks use it at the end of a workout, right? So as the kind of the think of like lifting or doing kind of a mix of lifting and cardio with kind of timed rest intervals, and then moving into the sauna as the finishing portion of that workout. And it really does kind of do a nice, boost of the heart rate, good cardiovascular kind of kick. But I think the part that folks like is one, there's this possibility, and the evidence suggests that it does a pretty good job of boosting the growth hormone. And so trying to get the most out of the work you just did,
Yeah.
lifting weights. And so again, that's like it's a no brainer, right? Like if I can kind of have that at the end of my workout and potentially get an extra kick,
Right.
that's going to last a few days, like awesome. And then while you're in there, you might as well do some rolling and stretching, which is a part that, like let's just face it, as males, we're really bad at it anyway. We're just inflexible, and then as we get older, that doesn't just go away if we ignore it. So, and that's a big part of injury prevention and then recovery as well. So that thing, and then so my hack is just that we love it for like putting our individuals in zone 2 kind of exercise mode, right? So this is a great way, like if I tell somebody as a provider, hey, Alan, I need you to do 150 minutes of zone 2 this week, right? Your heart doesn't know the difference of what you're doing. Now your legs can get tired. You can be sick of rowing or biking or doing whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah.
But that's the beautiful thing about the sauna. The heart doesn't know, and so if I throw you in the sauna and we can actually get you into zone 2 and keep you there, then that's free minutes from a work standpoint. You're going to be sucking a little bit when you're in there. It's not comfortable
Yeah.
doing the sauna correctly, at least not until you get used to it. But that's free, and that's great for our rehab folks, or think of our folks that are maybe deconditioned that just need a little extra kick,
Yep.
or folks that are recovering from injury, and or if we're trying to optimize like BMI or anything like that, we can get a little extra squeeze out of there without. There's really kind of low risk of injury if we kind of manage them correctly, versus telling you to run up and down the road for an extra 100 minutes a week. There's a huge risk of injury there, especially if you're not kind of sequentially building up to that effort.
Yeah, I mean the ability to stack some of these benefits that you can get all at the same time. And I mean, we just talked about this in the context of cold, right? You're getting recovery, you're getting these mental health benefits, like stacking those on top of each other. The ability to do that in a sauna with some of this, right? You're in there after workouts, you're trying to drive growth hormone production, you're boosting your heart rate at the same time. You're kind of cycling through a bunch of sweating and to whatever degree you believe in some of the detoxification benefits
Yeah,
of sauna. So this ability to do some of these things at the same time, no matter who you are, everybody's time crunched, I think is really compelling. And when you do that on a regular and recurring basis, then you start to step into some of the chronic health prevention,
yeah,
benefit disease prevention points, in the kind of cardiovascular disease, hypertension, Alzheimer's, dementia, stroke reduction that we sort of know as well. So, that's what's really compelling to me about and work on your flexibility, right? One of the things I've started trying to do is sit cross-legged, which I am really bad at. And
yeah,
like I feel like my hips are so tight, my ankles are tight, but I've started to try to do that while I'm in the sauna because again, your body's in this like kind of receptive state for it. And I've made a lot of progress actually. And you can do that while zone two, while growth hormone, while
yeah.
others is like feels a little bit like cheating to your point about fitness.
Yeah, and the last part is just that it's going to sound hokey, but I've met some great people in the sauna at the gym, and people that I probably wouldn't have had conversations with if we
Yeah.
weren't sitting 6 feet apart and kind of looking at each other for 20 minutes while we were sweating.
It's pretty funny
So
how that just happens. Like that there's a
yeah,
universal thing going on in saunas where you will be far more likely to chat with a stranger for I think generally for better.
and I'm far more likely to stay in for the full time, even if I'm hurting, if I'm talking to a stranger or
Yeah.
just good conversation going
What
on.
do you what do you what do you recommend and how does it vary if it does by purpose in terms of the duration of those sauna sessions? Like I personally have observed that if I'm really trying to get into that zone two state, I need to be kind of on the longer end of the range of an individual session. If we call it range, maybe, 15 to 25 minutes or something like that. Like I need to be kind of at that upper end to like access that zone two space.
Yeah.
Um, that may be different if you have another goal in mind.
The cool thing is we have such a wide range of individuals. So where I'm at now, we have a lot of support individuals. We still have a lot of soft individuals. So everybody's kind of coming at a different place initially,
Yeah.
but technology's made everything so readily available that literally, right? Like I have polar heart rate monitors that we just throw on you, and we can actually put them up on a big board that the coaches can see. And so, if you're during the workout or if you're doing the sauna session or whatever, your heart rate has the ability to be tracked by somebody else and yourself if you like. So, we don't have to guess anymore. We can pretty much hit zone two
Yeah.
and then sort of kind of once we've hacked it as far as what that takes, we can kind of work it and write you the regimen for what that's going to look like for you, going forward. And then if you deviate from that, like if you're, either you're improving and you need an adjustment, that's easy.
Yeah.
But the other side is if something's not quite right, right? Like you're just not Allen today. Like you had a rough weekend, maybe hung out at the beach for the entire weekend or something. That's reflected, and we need to probably back off on some of the things that we're doing and let your body recover before we put it through those stresses. So it's really kind of helps in all aspects of the training.
What do you pay attention to with respect to those heart rate levels? Just as I mean, so many of us have this also on our wrists at this point,
Yeah.
right? What kind of guidance might you give people to kind of better utilize, if you've got some sort of heart rate monitor, what to pay attention to as you see those readings in different types of hot and cold therapy?
So I'm not a spokesman for any companies or anything, but so I won't mention any specific names. But even the technology in that area is growing exponentially, and so there is a company out there that does ear pricks and checks your lactate levels in association with your heart rate and your power output. and then they'll give you specifically, they'll tailor it to the individual where
Yeah.
your zones lie. And then when you link your polar heart rate monitor to their app,
Yeah.
they will bump you around and give you reminders about if you're out of the zone or in the zone. And so it's being used by a lot of professional athletes right now to
Yeah.
sort of enhance their training, because what we found is like we're really terrible at like humans are terrible at regulating their own effort.
Yeah.
We're either on the weak side, right, like where we just aren't giving enough effort, or oftentimes we're actually over the effort for the goal that we're trying to obtain.
Yeah.
And zone two is like the hardest one, because you naturally want to be, you don't feel like you had a good run if you're running a 12-minute mile, right? For a lot of runners, that just feels
I find that
awkward.
my zone two is like the most annoying place to be. Like it's this
Yeah,
like half run, like it's not really a run, and it's like a fast walk that you would not do in a normal setting. Like I find it awkward. And to your point, it's one of the reasons I like trying for it in the sauna.
yeah, yeah. And so yeah, so I would say that it is individualized, but yours is probably quite a bit different than some of our other individuals. And
Yeah,
then we've
it's
got
really
some
different.
borderline Olympic athletes, that we really have to kind of get them into a different area in order to be zone two. Even it's kind of
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Where I wanted to close was like a little bit of a tangent, but it is really full circle in the sense that it's what you and I started working on together, which is
Yeah,
wading through a lot of scientific literature. I think
yeah,
that as the awareness of the health benefits and the degree to which they've been studied, in particular for sauna, cold, there's been maybe a few less studies. Like I want to say you and I went through 60 to 80 papers and probably three-fourths of those were in the sauna domain as compared to cold.
yeah,
Um, but there's a lot out there. But you and I also, well, you disqualified a lot of the papers that you read.
yeah,
As people start to, yeah, I think we're all becoming more aware of, what are the health benefits of something. There's a lot of claims out there. If there's one thing we know about the news and media landscape, it's that we need to kind of educate ourselves more than just the headlines. What advice would you give people if they want to start looking at the underlying research behind a claim and trying to vet it? Like, what are some things that strike you as, hey, red flag should go off if you see this,
yeah.
or these are hallmarks of quality, based on a bunch of the stuff that you and I went through together.
Yeah, so I would say, like, so for the layperson, right? Like numbers matter. So be wary of anything that has just a couple participants.
Yeah.
That's certainly how we get started and how we realize that maybe a big study is what we need. So those are great. Those are very valuable for sort of finding our way before we spend millions of dollars on studies. But numbers rule. Like you need to
I like it. If seven people in the study, like,
yeah.
maybe a couple of
Versus
grains of
the
salt.
sauna population studies had tens of thousands of people in them, and so there's issues with population studies like we talked about, but they're very good for just getting like sheer numbers of people into it, because just like the masses are not wrong, right? We there's some truth to what the masses are doing if we're seeing benefits like that.
Right.
So I think that's kind of the starting thing. The second thing is who's paying for the study. Be wary of studies paid for by people that have financial interests in the study. So it's great when government agencies sponsor the studies, and your tax dollars go to things like the CDC, who gives grants to people, and
Yeah.
so those are great because those are university people usually that are getting money to study a question. So yeah, be wary of who's paying for it, and then kind of the last part is the devil really is in the details. Like we talked about, if you do a sauna study, but your temperature is 110 degrees in the sauna, that's quite a bit different than what the rest of the world is doing.
Yeah.
So their result might be valid, but it's not valid to what question you're trying to answer, which is at a different temperature. So I think the other part is just those little nuances do matter. Maybe you'll get the same result, but it wasn't studied, so it's difficult to say. And so When we go through and you say we threw them out, we didn't get rid of any of the research. We just decided that it wasn't probably valid to answer the questions that we needed to provide the consumers that framework in order to kind of reasonably say with some degree of surety that, hey, this is good evidence that that you're doing, that this practice is working, or you're getting this benefit. And so hopefully they continue to do those studies, because it's great for everybody when we can kind of get that. And the other thing is, there's a lot of great reputable resources out there. We talked about I don't know if you want to pitch, but there's podcasts from Rhonda Patrick, and Peter Attia has a bunch of stuff, and Huberman has a bunch of stuff, and so those are great resources, because those are people that have an interest in getting it right. And so, well, I do feel that sometimes they leave the question open, right? They're not as maybe definitive as I want them to be, as saying like that's this
Yeah.
is bullshit or whatever. I understand that they're waiting for the next thing in order to say that. So, but they're very good about saying like, this works, this is valid. They just maybe don't dismiss as much as I do, but that's okay. They're less skeptical.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's just a practical recommendation that I would have, which is, I think folks like the names that you mentioned, uh, have the expertise to evaluate studies and will set aside stuff that's like obviously junk. And I think, Peter Attia in particular, like has a whole content series on basically like pointing out bad studies that have made it into mainstream media, which I appreciate when you see the latest
Yeah.
headline of like, something extreme. So using some of these proxies as a starting point, you and I
Yeah.
did one of that, which is to say, hey, we saw this here, really with your expertise, let's dive into the details and make sure we agree. So it wasn't an automatic green light, but if it was a red light for them, it was a simplifier to say, well, we probably don't need to spend a lot of time there. So that was really helpful. Thanks for going through that. I
Yeah.
certainly learned something. Hopefully others will as well. And with that, I'd say let's wrap it up here. This has been awesome and a lot of fun to kind of get an insight into the way that hot and cold is used, in the very particular and high performance world of the military. And, as we sit here filming this, sort of sitting in between Memorial Day and July 4th, it also feels appropriate to say thank you for your service to America. And thank you for all the help that you've given me as well with Framework. It's fun to be sitting here about a year later with something open and all that vetted research on the website.
Yeah, I would say the obviously it was a lot of fun working on this. It's a passion to work on kind of these projects, and we're immensely proud of Framework and you for doing it right. And I think that's the key, right? That's kind of what drew me in, was your desire to understand the science and to give people a service, but to do it in a way that accurately reflected kind of the health benefit. And so thank you for that, and immensely proud of you for that.
Awesome, man. Well, swing back through Nashville soon and let's continue the discussion in the sauna.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Patrick.
All right, thanks, Al.